In this video, I'm going to be finally assembling all the pieces together to make my 4 carcasses. When I'm done, it's going to look something like this. Before I assemble, I have to do 2 critical things. Number 1, I have to sand all the pieces down properly because I won't be able to sand it once it's assembled. I won't be able to reach the corner. So it's recommended to first sand all the pieces individually before assembly. And number 2, I have to create the pocket holes in order to screw them together. I'll show them later. In order to sand first, I'm going to be using my cheap, highly rated Black & Decker orbital sander that I got from Amazon. And it comes with these circular sandpaper that just sticks on like Velcro. I'm going to be using 100 grit sandpaper, medium grit, 100 grit. Anything lower is not recommended, it's just going to take off too much wood. The lower we go in grit, for example this 80 grit, it's going to be more coarse and it's going to take more wood shavings off. The higher we go in grit, like this 220, it's going to be finer and it's just for fine sanding. So for pre-assembly, I'm going to be doing 100 grit. Post-assembly, during finishing process, it's recommended to sand again, maybe with finer grits like 150 or 180. In order to sand the pieces, I'm going to be paying attention which side I need to focus on. The bad side doesn't need to be sanded as good as the good side. So I'm going to be sanding a little bit on the bad side, maybe once, but sanding really good on the front side, the good side. So I'm going to be starting with the bad side first. I'll take the tape off, store it temporarily here, and sand it very quickly. So it's recommended to go round like this, slowly, all the way over. Once I'm done with this side, I'm going to put my paper tape back so I don't lose my bad side. Go back to the good side and sand properly this side. So once I give 2 or 3 passes, I can actually touch it and see it's much smoother than what it was before. And that means it's done. So I'm going to do this for all the pieces just like that. The sanding process takes a lot of this fine dust out, which is not really good for breathing in. So it's always recommended to use some kind of mask when sanding these things. There's no need to really push the sander down with force. The weight of the sander itself is good enough to just sand at the appropriate pressure. So I have finished all my sanding process. I'm going to move on to make my pocket hole joinery using the Kreg K5 system. Before I talk about pocket holes, I wanted to talk about basic joinery first. Now here, this is an example of a piece of wood that I had that I glued on this end of the plywood to this face of this plywood. And this is just glue. There is no screw or nails in it. And even with just the glue, it's really hard to break this with my hand. It takes a lot of strength to break this. I went ahead and broke this side with my feet, kicked it in, and you can see that there is a failure in the wood itself. The ply of the plywood came out, but the glue did not. The glue did not fail. That tells me how far glue technology has come until now. So without pocket holes, what I can do is I can glue this in, I can put some nails and screws right here, and that's good enough. That's very strong joinery right there for cabinet making. But the disadvantage of that is I can see the nails and the screws, so I have to do something to hide it. And that's where the strength of or the beauty of pocket hole joinery from Kreg comes in. You can see here in this picture the screw, we have to drill some pocket holes and the screw goes inside the pocket holes, and the screws are not seen at all. All that is seen are the holes itself in which the screw goes. And that's how the pocket hole joinery works. And it's pretty well known and pretty widely used for cabinetry. Now let's dive into the setup for this K5 jig. There's a couple of things that I need to do. Number one, I have to set up the height of the hole, the pocket hole itself, and that can be done by raising this up and down. And I'm going to set it up to this 3/4 inch marking, because 3/4 inch, 3/4 inch is the thickness of my plywood. The next thing I have to do is adjust the clamping pressure. The way this jig makes it easy is, once I adjust the clamping pressure for my plywood, all I do is keep taking my plywood out, putting a new one in, and go up and down like this. But I have to first adjust the clamping pressure itself before the first time. In order to do that, I take my plywood, this is a scrap piece, I go all the way back over here. This handle needs to be down, this rail system needs to be back. Then I press on this gray tack, keeping the handle down, I push it all the way in. Then I let go of my gray tack, just hold this in with pressure towards the wood like this. And then I lift my handle slowly until I hear 2 clicks. Once I hear 2 clicks, I put it down. I'm not sure if you'll be able to hear the clicks. Let's see. I lift my handle up, I'm looking for clicks. That's 1 click. That's 2 clicks. Once I hear the 2 clicks, I pull it down. And now my clamping is adjusted. So all I do is lift this up, take the wood out, put another wood in, clamp it again. Take this out, take the third wood out, third piece in, and I keep going one after the other because my clamping is now set. The pressure is now set. Before I drill the pocket holes, I need to adjust my stopper on the drill bit. The stopper, the drill bit, looks something like this, and it comes with the stopper and this wrench. So I just take this and loosen it like this, put it in here until it hits all the way down, the tip hits the plastic over here. Then I lift it up just a little bit, about 1/16 of an inch, and then I tighten this part again. Once I tighten it, I have the stopper ready to put into my drill. This essentially makes sure that I don't drill all the way through the wood. So put the drill bit in my drill machine, set to about 10, maybe 15, and then I set it to high speed. That's it. These are my pocket holes. That's where the screw goes in. You can almost see where the screw sort of rests. Like that. This is how a screw looks like. I'm going to put it inside the hole over here. It's not going to go inside all the way. And then I take my drill, and this time I don't put it to high speed. I need to put it to low speed. This is important because this is going to make the screw go all the way in if this is set to too high or too strong. So I set it to low speed, and I set it to about maybe 5 low sort of torque. Then I put it into my system, and you can see how it comes out on the other side. This is what is supposed to go into the other piece of wood, this screw. Now, one critical thing to remember is these pocket holes, they always have the screw that goes in an angle. So the screw goes in an angle over here, and that's why it's important where the pocket hole, which side of the plywood the pocket hole is, based on the joint, whether it's on this side or whether it's on this side where the screw will go up. Now imagine we have to make a joint like this with this piece of wood. I wouldn't want the pocket screw to go up, because when it goes up, it's going to be very close to this side, the edge of the wood, and it's not going to be that strong of a joint. What I want is it to be catching the wood more. So this needs to be at an angle that will be away from the edge of the plywood. So the angle should be like this in order to catch it and to glue and hold the 2 sides properly. So the golden rule while doing pocket screws is always the angle of the screw, or the tip of the angle of the screw, or whatever, the tip of the screw should be always away from the edge of the plywood. Should not be towards the edge of the plywood, but away from the edge of the plywood. Now I need to decide where I put my pocket holes, and that's going to be a factor of two things. Number one, I need to follow the golden rule where any pocket holes I put, the direction of the screw shouldn't be towards the edge of the plywood, but away from the edge of the plywood for stronger connections. And the second is these holes itself. I don't want to put it in plain view, visible to the outside world. It should be hidden as much as possible. So let's look at all the joinery I need to make. Start from the top. These are the top slats. And here I definitely want to put the pocket holes on the very top because the screw direction is going to be in this direction away from the edge of the plywood. And also it will be hidden because it's going to have the countertop on top of these. Next is this particular drawer divider. The drawer goes in here. So I can put the pocket holes right here on the top. Again, the screw direction going in. Because if there is a drawer, the drawer is going to be right on top of this and it's going to hide for me these holes. I can also put it under, but when I open the door, I might be able to see the screw hole. So I think it's better to put on the top for this particular slat. Next, going down to the base, obviously I don't want the pocket holes on the top. I want it under the base, and that will make the screw direction go up, which is okay because I'm not really at the edge of this plywood except in this area where I have the toe kick. But all through this, it's 2 or 3 inches up, so I'm okay having the screw direction go up. And the last part is the toe kick area. The toe kick area, I'll have to probably break the golden rule because that's just something which is holding this base, so to speak. But I don't want the pocket holes on the right visible on the front over here. That's gonna not look nice, and I have to hide them. So what I'm gonna do is break the golden rule and have the pocket holes on the back of this toe kick. And that way it will not be visible. But like I said, I'm still breaking the golden rule, but it's not that important for the toe kick area for stronger connections. So that's my strategy. Now that I know, looking at this, I can see that pretty much all my pocket holes are on the bad side of the plywood. Over here, this is the bad side, this is the bad side, and under the base is the bad side, and behind the toe kick is the bad side. And my bad side is already marked with the tape. So all I have to do is make sure that when I put the wood in, my bad side is not forward like this, but it's behind, and that's how my screws are going to go in behind. The holes are going to be made behind, or like this when I'm doing it vertically. So that's it. I'm going to start start putting pocket holes on all the necessary places and get it ready for assembly. Here's all my finished pocket hole on all the required places and all the pieces. So it looks like, in summary, the pocket holes are done on all the horizontal pieces. So the top pieces over here, the back top, if this piece exists, the base and the toe kick. Anything that goes in horizontal has pocket holes in them. Similarly for the wall cabinet, the top and the bottom and the back top, which we don't see in this diagram. But they all have horizontal pocket holes to nail in the screw horizontally into these two side pieces, and that holds all the cabinet together. So here's all my bases and the tops and the back tops done. The only place where it's a little bit different is the back tops, where I have horizontal holes here, but I also have vertical holes that go up, that basically screws in to the top slat over here, or the top piece over here. So the back top not only screws into the side, but also screws into the top slats and the top piece over here. That's why I have the 3 holes over here. That's the only piece that is different. Otherwise everything has only horizontal holes, pocket holes. I'm going to start assembling all the pieces now. I invested in these Rockler clampet system. It's a little bit expensive, but it gives several benefits. Like for example, I can take all the pieces, put it together in one shot rather than one by one, and it makes all the pieces flush on the bottom because this height is the same for all 4. And also it keeps everything at right angles, which is important for cabinetry. Other than this, I have the glues and the glue applicator and a mallet. I'm using exterior proof glue because my cabinets are exterior. Then I have a bunch of these miscellaneous clamps that I've had accumulated over time. These are irregular clamps, and I have a couple of Bessie clamps there too. So the strategy I'll be using to assemble is to do the face of the cabinet first. That means I'm going to take the edge banded side, which is the front face of the cabinet, put it face down like this and do a dry fit on all four sides with the edge band face down. Here's my finished dry fitted pieces. This is the base, these are the two sides, and that's the top. All the pieces have edge banding on the bottom, so the face of the cabinet is pointing towards the floor. In order to put the pieces together, what I did is basically took this clampet system and sort of hammered it in, pointing towards the outside. And then with the other hand, I took the two pieces that I have and pushed them towards the inside of the clampet. That's how I sort of pushed them together on opposite sides. And then once they're all connected properly at right angles, then I tightened the clamps. And that's what I did for all four corners. To put the base in, one thing extra I did is I put the toe kicks in. The toe kicks, which I'm going to nail them later, but I just clamped them in flush with the bottom of the cabinet on both sides. And then I made the base just rest on the toe kicks. And that's going to make sure that I don't put the base in the wrong place, messing up later on the toe kick installation. And the last thing I did is took a couple of long clamps like this and put them on the very top to make sure the top is held tight. The same thing I did over here. I put the long clamp on the top end of this base. The bottom is held by these clampet systems. That makes sure that this thing doesn't move at all, this one and the base. And that helps with the pocket screws later on. This is ready to screw it in, but I'm going to do one extra step and put some glue on the joining surfaces. So what I'm going to do is take this side and pull it out by loosening this one and that one. Pull it out, put some glue, waterproof glue on the gluing surface, and then I'm going to push this side back in. And the same thing I'm going to do on the other side. And then I'm going to adjust everything one more time, one last time, and then screw everything together. Here's my finished glued and put together again panels. The last thing I make sure before I screw them in is to make sure that all the surfaces are flush on the top here, and especially on the bottom where the two edge bands meet. I make sure all four corners are flush. I also check if the base is properly aligned and the clamps on the top are put together again back as it was before. Now it's time to screw them in. So here's my partly assembled carcass. I took it out of the clamps. Now I'm going to focus on the back slat and also the back top as well as the toe kicks, and I'm going to do that just by using clamps. Here's my finished assembled carcass. The only part that is missing is on the back panel, which I'm going to do at the very end after I do the finishing of the cabinet. That's the toe kick underneath. I'm going to assemble the other cabinets exactly in the same way. The only slight difference will be the wall cabinet, which doesn't have toe kicks, but that actually makes it easier to assemble. Here's my finished assembled cabinets. That's cabinet 1 and 2, and that's cabinet 3. And this is a separate wall cabinet built. That's cabinet 4. This is how it looks from the inside. I already put the back panel in, cut and put the back panel in, but it's actually not screwed in. This is the back. As I said, I didn't screw it in because I'll do that at the very end. I might put a couple of pocket screws in and only glue it on the top and bottom. I haven't decided that yet. Same thing over here, it'll come out. This is how the pocket screws look on the back. They're all hidden. Like you see the top ones on the top, the countertop will sit on top, so it'll hide the pocket screws. And the base also has pocket screws underneath. Couple of closing thoughts before I end. The first one is about clamping. I noticed that whenever I try to screw the pocket screws in, it has a tendency to move this piece, to move it away from the drill. So in order to counter that, the clamping has to be done very nicely and tightly. This is a clamp from Kreg for pocket holes. I didn't quite like it, didn't work for me because every time I try to clamp, I don't know if you can see there's a crack over here. It cracks my pocket hole for some reason. And I tried different variations of it with different clamping pressures. It always breaks my or cracks my pocket hole. So I'm not going to be using this. Apart from the Rockler clamp it system that I showed before, these are the kind of clamps that I pretty much exclusively use for all the pocket screws. I have to use a slightly larger or longer clamps. I have a couple of 48 inches one to hold these two sides, for example. And it's also a good idea to take a scrap piece like this, put it up against and clamp it like this, so that it also further minimizes the movement of this wood when I try to screw this in. The second closing thought that I want to highlight is the importance of this tape that I put in. I can remove it at this point, but I had put in this tape when I was doing the rough cuts at the very beginning on the 4x8 plywood, and since then this tape has been acting as a guide for me through several processes. First of all, I know that I put the tape on the bad side of the plywood, so when I was cutting on the table saw or the circle saw, I always made sure that the blade was cutting into the bad side first. Later on, it was also helpful in assembling the cabinet because I knew which side to be facing out. I wanted a good side to be facing inside. It also helped as a guide when I was doing the pocket holes because I knew I had to do the pocket holes only wherever there is a tape attached. It also helped in sanding because I was more focused on the good side, didn't have to sand that much on the bad side. And then at the end, it helped me assemble, make sure that the good side is always on the inside. So assembly was also easier because I knew which direction the wood should be facing. So that's the overall processes and guidance that I got just by putting a tape on the very beginning. Like I said, I can remove this right now. I don't need it. I'll remove all the tapes. But the assembly of the cabinet is done at this point. The next step would be to make the drawers and the doors and stain. Thanks for watching.